Hi there. Welcome to Help Solve the Case. We are following the Lindsay Clancy trial. We had the first day of opening arguments between the prosecution and the defense, the Commonwealth and the defense. And we had our first witness on the stand, which is Lindsay's former husband, the father of the children. We're going to get into that. I'm going to give you my initial opinion about what I've heard. I really appreciate you being here and supporting the channel and everything that you do. Your being here helps me work harder for identifying our over 15,500 unidentified human remains cases across the United States and support our law enforcement in using forensic genetic genealogy and other DNA methods to solve cases across the United States. I really appreciate it. Once again, I have my notes. I will do my best to decipher. Before the trial officially got started, the judge came on. The judge was talking about the charges. And I think that's very interesting here because I went through the indictment in a prior video. And I was not sure exactly which parts of the murder, the intentional first-degree murder, they were going after. And the judge clarified that. The judge said that the state is alleging that it was deliberate and it did have extreme atrocity. The judge also talked about the fact of the defendant, Lindsay, who is at this point innocent until proven guilty, that the Commonwealth, the prosecution has to show that she is criminally responsible. And the Commonwealth bears that responsibility. The defense has no burden. And they talked about that the judge said, even if she has some mental disease or defect, did she have the ability to be criminally responsible? They started getting into what had happened that day. And I have to tell you, I was not aware of the details of this case. And I will just preface this. If you have not heard it, I don't know if this is the first time that we've heard this, but allegedly, Lindsay took their lives through the use of exercise bands. And when we read the complaint, we talked about the element of suffocation and or strangulation. And apparently they died through the use of exercise bands. I'm not even going to describe that further. And it was one child at a time. They talked about the state, the Commonwealth. I apologize. I'm going to call it the state. I'm not used to calling it the Commonwealth. Talked about dinner plans and what was arranged for dinner, the restaurant that was chosen, so that Lindsay knew how much time that she had. Allegedly, she took care of the children and then went upstairs with a kitchen knife. And between the time of unaliving the children, she went upstairs with a kitchen knife and was able to apparently, again, allegedly, from the prosecution, take a 14-second call from Patrick, her husband at the time. There was talk about pills being crushed, slashing of wrists, and using the knife, and then going out the window. At 6 p.m., Patrick comes home with the takeout food. There was talk about her hearing a male voice that said to her, this is again allegedly to Lindsay, that this was her last chance and told her to unalive the children so that she could then unalive herself. And there was a reference to, quote, command hallucinations. And apparently that is some type of instruction. I'm not a psychologist. That is some type of instruction in mental illness that is some sort of order to do something. Let me see if I can pause that and find out what that is. So I'm just reading this here. It says from the JAAPL.org, not sure what that is. It says command hallucinations are auditory hallucinations that instruct a patient to act in specific ways. These commands can range in seriousness from innocuous to life-threatening. And then we have some more things. I'm doing AI here, just a Google search. What are the 5 types of hallucinations? Hallucinations are when you sense things that aren't really there. The 5 primary types are auditory, visual, olfactory, gustatory, and tactile hallucinations. It talks about, while we're here, is it normal to hallucinate on command? This is just the Google answers. Command hallucinations are often associated with schizophrenia. People experiencing command hallucinations may or may not comply with the hallucinated commands. Depending on the circumstances, compliance is more common for non-violent commands. Talks about what is the best medication for command hallucinations. I'm just going to bring this up because we are going to talk about some medications. It says olanzapine, emulsipride, ziprasidone, and ketapine. And it says, are command hallucinations a psychiatric emergency? Most dangerous are command hallucinations accompanied by a strong urge to obey the commands. Generally, if someone is experiencing command hallucinations to hurt anyone, then this is a psychiatric emergency, and the person should be taken to a psychiatric emergency room right away. And there's just things here about psychosis and things like that. All right. So the state talked about, and I have this quote here, that Lindsay acted, quote, intentionally, rationally, and specifically. And, quote, she was, quote, not psychotic that day, end quote. There was a reference to her being a classic overachiever and that she liked to be in control. There was reference to strict schedules around the house. There was discussion about no longer having a nanny, that she was responsible for it all, that she no longer liked her life. She was able to manipulate providers, being the doctors and other medical and mental health providers. The state, the Commonwealth, mentioned that she changed her medications after days and when she didn't like the plan, and that the unaliving was because that no one could care for her kids like she did, and so therefore she did what she did. They also stated that she intentionally drew her husband out of the house with the food. We then had the defense come on. I just wanted to, again, read my notes. This is the defense talking about it. The defense attorney started off very low, very, I don't want to say mousy, but mousy, and then really gained some volume and started presenting pictures, talking about how there was a struggle to pay for the house. There was mention, that SSRIs are not for bipolar disorder. I don't know who has bipolar disorder. That was just what was referenced here. As I mentioned, he picked up the tempo, the defense attorney, and he started talking about photos. And he talked about faking a suicide attempt. He talked about a cut throat. He talked about a Jefferson fracture of the thoracic spine, that the first disc, the cervical spine, referencing Superman. It's the same type of injury that Superman had. And it's common in people that dive headfirst into the swimming pool. They mentioned some doctors about Zoloft, this SSRI, and that apparently she had an adverse reaction. She went to the ER in November that she could not emote. That means she did not have emotions. There were suicidal ideations in December. That's thoughts of suicide. And that she had told her mother and Patrick that she had thoughts about hurting the children. Then we had Patrick Clancy come on a stand. And I will just tell you, while he looked very put together, his eyes appeared to be very red. I don't know if I would say bloodshot, but very red rimmed. Looked like he might have had no sleep or might have been crying the night before. Well, I said he appeared very put together. It appeared to be very trying for him. He stated he lived in New York. They are now divorced. They had met in May of 2013 through a cousin. Now, this is the Commonwealth, the prosecution calling him as a witness, and that has to be very difficult. The Commonwealth, the prosecution, has to establish the victims as a victim, and the defendant is obviously not going to be able to do that. So they need somebody to do what is called introduce it. At the same time, we have heard that Patrick is supportive of his wife or his ex-wife, pardon me, the defendant. So this has to be, when we look at witnesses and how this is going to play out, because that's what we do here, it's got to be very challenging all around, because he may not be the best witness for the prosecution, but he's a necessary witness. I'm just guesstimating here. I'm speculating because we don't know. And because of the nature of what has happened, it's a very delicate balance. They talk about the Commonwealth introduces that they started dating in 2013. They met through a cousin. I believe I wrote the date down, December 24th, 2017. I believe that's when they got married. And so the phone was ringing, busy around here. So we were talking about how they met in May of 2013 through a cousin. And I think they got married in December 24th, 2017. But I thought this was interesting, something that the prosecution said, that Lindsay did not mention that she had been on psych meds while in nursing school. And that was the word, psych meds. So I thought that was important. And he said, nope, I didn't know about that. So from what I understand, the defense may be saying that, yes, this was postpartum, but it was induced by all this prescribing, like a temporary insanity, diminished capacity, or something like that. Again, I'm just speculating. And so if there was a long-standing history back to nursing school or college or something of that nature, then that wouldn't necessarily make that a specific incident, right? They talk about in some cases the heat of passion. It was a one-off event. Like, it wasn't a pattern of behavior. So I think we should watch for that. They went through, and it was kind of horrible to hear. They talked about problems with the prior pregnancy, with Cora, that there was a rough delivery, we'll say that when it came to Lindsay going back to work, she had anxiety, she struggled with it. And having Dawson, it was, quote, pretty traumatic, end quote. And again, I don't have kids, but God bless you guys, because they said that he was a breach, something to do with the breach, and bruising and tearing. And God bless all you moms. God bless all you mothers. They talked about anxiety again and discomfort, emotional discomfort about when she had to go back to work, and that she expressed that she had a hard time being separated from the children, and that she had been seeing a therapist after Dawson's birth. There was some reference to, which I'm not sure what this is going to be about, but they brought it up in the questioning about cleaning the garage. That did they on some date, and I didn't write down the date because I didn't catch it at the time, how important it might be. They were on such and such a date. Were you going through the garage and were you cleaning out things in the garage? And was Lindsay participating? Yes, yes, yes. And then they asked about it. Were you throwing stuff away? Yes. And then Patrick kind of answered, or the Commonwealth said something. It was kind of an ongoing thing, wasn't it? Or something like that. So I don't know where that's going about behavior or something about cleaning out the garage. Something got destroyed or thrown out. Not sure, but it struck me as odd. It's getting mentioned for a reason. You just don't know what reason. Then they talked about Callan being born, and Patrick said it was a great delivery. It was very quick, and that Lindsay never went back after having Callan. In September, the anxiety started. I think she was supposed to go back in October. There was a lot of stress, and there was reference to in August or September, there was a nanny, Lainey, or something like that, that came in. And when Patrick was asked to comment on the anxiety, he described it as just generally being stressed out. Like there wasn't any specific physical description or things like that. And then they described being on an outing. I think maybe it was going to somebody's wedding or something, and they were walking downtown, and the Commonwealth asked if there was a conversation about Lindsay starting taking Zoloft. And Patrick said yes, that they, and I'm paraphrasing here, right, that they talked about her, that she wanted to take Zoloft to help with anxiety, and that she was going to ask the doctor. That was like what they had discussed and the agreement between them. And that after this, that they mentioned the name Jennifer Tufts or Tiffs or something like that as the provider. And let me just move this over. After the Zoloft, according to Patrick, Lindsay was not improving. She became more depressed, and she was nervous about a trip that he was going to take. And the Commonwealth pointed out, which I thought was interesting, she asked Patrick, remember that conversation when they were walking downtown about, honey, again, I'm paraphrasing, honey, I think I'd like to try to start taking Zoloft. Maybe it will help. I'm going to talk to the doctor about it. And the Commonwealth said, did you know that she had already obtained the prescription the day before and did not tell him? So what does that potentially go to, right? When we talk about our courtroom chess game and witness statements and credibility and impeachment, could that be that the Commonwealth wants to show that she intentionally did not tell him? Could it be that the prosecution or the Commonwealth, wants to show that she lied to him and that she was going to do whatever she wanted to do regardless? And in fact, according to the Commonwealth, she already did it because she went and got it. They're going to paint her, the defendant, however they want to paint her to prove their theory of what happened, right? The Commonwealth wasn't there, but they have to, I give my analogy of the Netflix show, right? The Commonwealth is going to tell their story, their version of events, the way that they're going to tell it. And you're going to like that show or not, the jury, like that. We're representing kind of members of the jury in some respect. We're viewing it, we're hearing it. We're going to like it or we're not. And then the defense is going to put on another documentary and we're going to like it or we're not. And we're going to believe, based on what we show, we're going to say, I believe this one more than this one. And that's what it comes down to, right? After this happened, he said, the husband, Patrick said, husband at the time, that she was not improving. She got more depressed and that her sleep started to suffer. That they talked about her stopping taking it, but she was advised to take a double dose. And then there was some discussion that Lindsay asked Patrick to sleep in the basement because she was having a lot of trouble sleeping. And then he did it for like 2 days. And then she went to sleep in the basement for a couple of weeks. Then there was some discussion back and forth because, again, I believe what it sounds like on the defense theory, they're talking about this, and you will see the bag of pills from the Commonwealth. And we've heard some different things in the news and back and forth about 10 prescriptions, 8 prescriptions, a whole bunch of prescriptions that she was taking at the same time. Apparently, there's also been a civil suit filed. So there's a little dispute about the numbers. But according to the Commonwealth, they asked Patrick, were you aware she only took 7 Zoloft pills? And he kind of responded that he kind of really didn't connect the dots. He wasn't really sure because you can't really connect it to it because some things were doubled and some things weren't, that they were changing the medication up. What he did say was that she kept getting worse and worse between October and December of 2022. And then they changed the doctor. I guess they were seeing this Jennifer Tift, and it wasn't working out. And they changed the doctor to a perinatal psychiatrist that could have, it sounded like, was recommended by Patrick's mom. And Patrick's mom, it sounded like she worked in the hospital. I'm not familiar with all the maternity and female health kind of things related to labor and delivery and all that stuff, but it sounded like Patrick's mother also worked in a hospital or in a medical setting, and she recommended somebody. The name Julie Paul came out, and then a Rebecca Gelada, and then a Letitia Dukes. The Commonwealth, sorry, I'm going to keep calling it state. The Commonwealth, then, I believe it's Exhibit 1, referenced a printout of pharmacy records from CVS, and I believe Patrick supplied that. And then they talked about a February 6, 2023 bag of medicine, and Patrick stated that the police took a bag of medicine, and that it sounded like he also had a bag of medicine in his truck because, and I don't know if it's a doctor or nurse or whatever, Gelada told him to bring it in to a police department or somewhere to destroy. That when they have, I don't know if they have like electronic recycling and prescription give back and stuff, because these can be very dangerous drugs. And so they don't want you to just throw them out. They don't want you to flush them down the toilet because it's polluting our water supply. They want you to take them somewhere where they can be disposed of properly. All right. So now then the Commonwealth really starts, and let's talk about, because the defense theory seems to be, or the defense seems to be, this overwhelming amount of prescriptions that caused this singular event. I don't know if it's psychosis or whatever, this diminished capacity that was caused by this wealth of medicines and this bag. If you watch the video, you see the Commonwealth has this huge bag of meds. And she starts asking Patrick, were you aware that the Zoloft prescription on September 15, 2022, Lindsay only took 7 out of the entire prescription? That with the Ativan prescription that was done on October 26, 2022, only 6 pills of 30 were taken. And Patrick said, I know that there were adjustments made on the Ativan, but he's like, I mean, can you imagine if one of your family members is taking pills? Like, you don't know how many pills. Sometimes you don't even know how many pills you've taken, right? You're supposed to take 2 a day. Have you ever counted them? Like an antibiotic or something. You're like, did I take it this morning? Or how many do I have left? And you have to count down or something. I'm sure you guys have been through that, right? So they're asking the husband, like, how do you what she was taking or what she wasn't taking. Then they talk about Buspar that was prescribed on October 22nd, 2022, that only 2 pills of 30 were taken. And he stated he found out about that later. So right now we've got September 15th, Zoloft, October 22nd, Ativan, October 26th, we got another one, hydroxamine, which the Commonwealth described as some like a Benadryl or something, that only 2 out of 30 were taken. And then there was another Buspar prescribed on November 9th, 30 pills, and no pills were taken. And then there's Trazodone prescribed on November 16th, 30 pills, and only 7.5 were taken. Like, that is a lot of stuff. But depending on, in some of these, I mentioned in an early video that I know folks that take some of these things, and there are cautions about don't stop and start, take the full thing, don't stop without taking your doctor, right? And all these adjustments can really cause things, right? So the defense theory could be possible. Again, I'm not a narcotics specialist in the medical sense. I'm not a psychiatrist, a psychologist, or any of that, but I just think it's interesting. This is what the Commonwealth is presenting. So the Commonwealth said there were a lot of pills prescribed, but not a lot taken. And Patrick clarified, well, these are the pills that were brought into the police station. What I got from that was there was a whole lot more. Maybe that was seized from the house, maybe that were not seized. Again, we did not see, to my knowledge that I saw, we didn't see the whole CVS list of prescription history. We just heard the Commonwealth counting these out. The husband was then asked, again, he's the ex-husband at the time, he was the husband, how many medications did he think she was taking? He said about 3 to 4 medications at any one time. And the Commonwealth said, would you be surprised if it's actually only 2 or 3? So again, knowledge, no knowledge, intentional, otherwise. What do we think about that? Then they talked about how on November 16, 2022, she went to the South Shore Hospital because she went 48 hours without sleeping. She had heart palpitations. And then the state brought up, or the Commonwealth brought up, were you aware that she had taken a weed gummy, which I guess is a marijuana gummy, and that she did not tell hospital staff? And he said no. And that she drove herself to and from the hospital. So again, the Commonwealth is presenting an item potentially of not telling about medication and purportedly what she's taking and not taking. And could a weed gummy cause any of these things? We don't know. In September and November, the Commonwealth pointed out, they were talking about that she was still doing family activities. They went out for Halloween and did food trucks. The Commonwealth was sharing pictures of different events. Was this her? Pictures, she's smiling, trying to demonstrate, I think, here she is, she's out living life, everything's fine, and she's got a smile on her face. We all know about social media and all that stuff, that it's very easy to smile for a second and not really feel that way. Or everybody smiles for a photo. Most people smile for a photo, especially for social media, right? Does social media really tell you what's going on below the surface? I'm sure many of us would agree, no, it doesn't. They talked about Thanksgiving the week before, that Patrick said that they celebrated Thanksgiving with her parents the week before, and then the week after, they went to his sister's house. They showed pictures of Thanksgiving. There was, I want to say 3 women. They had some turkey shirts on, they're shoulder to shoulder in the kitchen. And Patrick said, right, so she looks the picture of perfect health. Patrick said Lindsay that day was in rough shape. And truthfully, to me, you just see the smile on the picture. So you don't see that. But again, how many times do we just put a smile on your face and everything will be hunky dory, right? My mom used to say something. I was trying to think of what she would make a fake smile, and I don't know, she had a saying. I can't think about it. I can't remember it. So that day, even though they've got this picture that the state is showing, Patrick is saying she was in rough shape. She wasn't talking very much. She had low energy and she had very little interaction. They talked about at the event, he said they took care of the kids together. The state, or the Commonwealth, then brought up their wedding anniversary on 12/3/2022 and referenced that they had gone out in Boston, that he had bought her a massage and something about Parker House. And he was like, no. And the state's like, yes. And he's like, no, not verbatim, but right what I'm saying. And he's like, no, not 2022. We stayed home. Commonwealth showed a photo and he's like, that's not, no. She's like, this is in 2022. He's like, no. So either he forgot about it and she's got something, or that was another issue. It seemed to me that she felt certain of the date and what she had, the Commonwealth. And he was like, nope. He did very well with very short, determined answers. He did a good job as a witness. Oh, they were supposed to go out, but she was not feeling well, so they canceled and got takeout. Then there was a description about November 26, 2022, where they went out and got a tree as a family. The Commonwealth shows pictures of the photos from the tree farm. They talked about the 12/6/2022, that on that date, did Lindsay tell, what's his name? I flanked on his name. I want to say Parker. Oh my goodness. Patrick. There we go. Was he aware that she started taking new meds? And he said he was not sure of the date, but the Commonwealth was talking about Seroquel. And Patrick said, I believe she started taking it before December 6th. And after she started taking it, she was awful. And that the, quote, big spiral started. She lost a lot of weight. She became very depressed and she was suicidal. Patrick was asked about that, and he stated that he asked Lindsay if she had a plan, and she said no. And that Patrick said that he never heard Lindsay talking about having a plan. And apparently there may be something about, I don't know, how suicidal are you if you have a plan or you don't have a plan? I don't know. I don't even know how to comment on that. I'm just telling you what was asked and answered. The Commonwealth talked about a Surface Pro and who had, which they said was like a tablet, and who had access to that. He said they both had access to that. And so the Commonwealth asked on August 22nd, 2022, who searched the link or brought up the link about, who clicked on the link about methods of suicide. And he was like, not me. I didn't do that. So that's August 22nd, 2022. Now we are hearing from the Commonwealth's questions that the first time Patrick hears this is December. And the incident happened in January, right? So again, going back to all these little connected dots, when we talk about connecting the dots of probable cause in a story, it sounds to me, let me know what you think, it sounds to me that the state is trying to say, remember, they asked about psych meds in nursing school. Now they're talking about searching about suicide in August, that it was only December because of this specific medication cocktail. The Commonwealth is trying to raise questions and raise doubt about, is that accurate? Again, we're just getting into this, folks, but I'm catching these things. I'm catching what they're putting down, and I think we should pay attention to it. So that was before she started on all of these medications. Patrick said that when she started talking about suicide in December, he let her mother know, that they both let her mother know, and that Lindsay mentioned other, quote, intrusive thoughts, and that was a word that was used by both of them. Lindsay said she thought of hurting the kids or them having some kind of ailment, much more dramatic than stomach aches and things like this. And so this was causing, apparently, Lindsay some concern. But there was no specific thoughts about how to do the suicide or anything like unaliving anybody, or about hearing any specific voices or anything. There was discussion about Patrick and Lindsay having a discussion about feelings and how she felt, and the unaliving, the children hurting the kids and having some sort of ailment, that he asked her, "Is this disturbing to you?" And she said yes. That, quote, "something might happen to the kids," end quote. And he was told this, they talked about this a couple times over a few nights. And her parents came up to stay with them. And they were talking about, should they keep the kids away? Should they keep her away? And Patrick said that it was confusing because they would have these discussions about what she was thinking about. Can you imagine this, saying, "I'm really worried because I'm having thoughts about potentially hurting the children or something really horrible happening to the children." And then he says, and then it was confusing because she would then go and play with them. And again, no commentary here. I don't know about postpartum. I don't know. I mean, I've heard all kinds of things. It is a busy phone day today here at the headquarters. All right. So Patrick was confused because he said they would have these conversations about what she was feeling, what she was potentially thinking, and then she would just go and play with the kids and take care of the kids. Whether that was she was just trying to stuff it down and deal with her responsibilities and be there the best she could, I don't know. Patrick reiterated that she never said she had a plan. I think the Commonwealth asked him, did she ever tell the doctors that she had a plan? And he said he doesn't know what the doctors asked. He suggested that she go see the doctor, not because of the thoughts, but because at Thanksgiving, Lindsay mentioned that she was feeling that she was getting addicted to the benzodiazepam and the Seroquel. So they were going to make this appointment with Dr. Gelada. And I don't know if it's a doctor, nurse, or what kind of practitioner that is. I apologize. And so Patrick said that he was emphatic that it has to be in person, and that he felt that having this meeting, that they would be able to figure it out, that there had been a few quick telehealth appointments, and he didn't feel that that was effective. And so that on 12/6/2022, I believe they had a meeting with Gelada, and that the discussions around harming the kids came after Thanksgiving, but before December 6th. And again, reiterating that there was never any plan about what she thought about doing or how to do it or anything like that. On December 15th, 2022, Lindsay went to Mass General emergency room. And because according to Patrick, she had told her father that she wanted to unalive herself. And that in talking to him about that, her father, and thinking about it, that it didn't bother her at all. So earlier, Patrick had mentioned that he had asked about, is that disturbing to you? Meaning, I guess, is it disturbing that you're having these thoughts? And this time, it sounds like, again, speculating, I'm trying to interpret what they said because I can't get into their mind. I wasn't there. But that Lindsay's like, what? Yeah, I'm thinking this and it's not bothering me. So Patrick brought her to the ER. They saw the doctors. They talked about admission. One doctor was in favor of admission and into a full-time facility, and two of them were in favor of the day program. And she did enter into the day program, and Patrick dropped her off. I think she was there for one day, and he was told to come get her. And what Patrick said was that the providers suggested that Lindsay told Patrick that the providers suggested he come get her and to meet with the providers, and that in the discussion with the doctors, they said this is not the right program for her. And then the Commonwealth asked the question about, was she still working out, and mentioned some dates. I think I caught them all: December 6th, December 13th, December 17th, and December 18th. So working out, trying to take care of herself. I don't know. I've heard that when you work out, you get endorphins. It makes you feel better. Like, who knows? I'm not the medical expert on that, but I'm letting that the Commonwealth brought that up. There were no more words about harming the children, but apparently Lindsay was still thinking about unaliving herself. And she was, according to the Commonwealth, asking Patrick, she was still taking the children to doctor's appointments and stuff. She was still continuing to do life, right? And then on 12/27, the Commonwealth said, did Lindsay call the doctor on 12/27 when the kids were not feeling well? Yes. On December 30th, Lindsay took Callan to the doctor that day. Yes. On December 31st, they were back at Mass General because Lindsay was still talking about unaliving herself. Patrick said he was just exhausted and he felt it was time that she go to McLean. And McLean was the full inpatient facility because he says there was no diagnosis, that it was medication. And one can imagine all this is going on. They still did not have any type of diagnosis. Try this, not his words, my words, right? That's what it sounded like. And he was like, this is not getting better. Let's put her in there where she's safe. These are my words, my thinking, my interpretation. She's safe, kids safe, and we can get this under control. They needed a referral. And the Commonwealth asked him, were you aware that while Lindsay was at the ER, she was taking selfies? And he said no. And they showed two pictures of her at the ER. You can see her. She's got a face mask on. She looks like she's maybe sitting in the bed, maybe the intake room. And then there's another picture showing her feet under the sheet and a door. That there was not any further on that. God only knows what they're going to say about that. Does it look good? Does it look bad? I'm sure we can say all kinds of stuff. Maybe it could be she was frustrated because here we are again. I still don't have answers. Please, everybody pray for me because they can help me this time. I mean, I've seen it on social media. I'm sure we've all seen it on social media. I'm in the ER. I don't know what is going on. They might have to do surgery. Please pray for me. Nothing's working. Those type of things. We just don't know the context. So we can't make any assumptions. I'm letting that the state is bringing it up. The Commonwealth is bringing it up. And they've got a reason. So she was transferred that evening to McLean around 0300. So that would actually be the first. And Patrick was asked if he had gone to see her. He said he went 2 or 3 times. mentioned only that there was something that he could only go between 2 to 6 p.m. and that he couldn't just pop in anytime. He mentioned that Lindsay was there for 5 days, and according to Patrick, when asked to describe Lindsay's leaving the facility, she was only there for 5 days. According to Patrick, Lindsay said she was not really getting any treatment and that she had not met with the doctor. And he mentioned that she had arrived on the Saturday and Monday was the holiday. And so by Tuesday, she had not seen a doctor. And this, according to Patrick, was what Lindsay told him. The Commonwealth said, were you aware that she was seen by the doctor on the first day and the third day? Well, he says, no. Were you aware that she was offered one-on-one therapy and group therapy on January 1st, the day she was admitted? No. Were you aware that she had 2 group sessions on January 3rd? No. And Lindsay declined further therapy on January 3rd. Were you aware she took a medication mandate, declined further treatment on January 5th? And there was a couple in there, I could not write them down fast enough, but it was like bing, 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 bing. And his answer was no. So here we go again. The Commonwealth seems to be saying she's not telling you the truth. She's telling you a different story. Were you aware of that? And it seems to be potentially a pattern. There was discussion about Lindsay asking the doctors to be discharged on the 6th so that she could go to Cora's birthday on January 7th. And then she apparently also asked to go home on the 5th so that she could get ready for the party. Patrick was asked about insurance and asked about, were there problems with the insurance? Maybe trying to sidestep any potential discussion about the reason she left was because of insurance. And Patrick responded, I would have paid anything. And that was really a heartbreaking statement. Just imagine. It sounds like from what he's describing that he did a lot, and he talked about being exhausted and frustrated, and what do you do? What do you do? He's trying to hold everything together. They took a break, then they came back. They talked about how she was discharged. Lindsay was discharged on January 5th, 2023, and Patrick brought her home. They talked about some photos on January 7th, a party for Cora at this place called Nova. They showed videos from the birthday. They were texting and checking in with each other every day. They talked about the Museum of Science. And at one point, when they first started showing these photos and stuff, Patrick, I didn't know if he was going to hyperventilate. It was very hard. He was breathing so heavy and trying to keep his composure. He is doing an excellent job considering the circumstances. It seems as if the prosecution is trying to be as gentle as possible. Again, we don't know if it's a situation with a hostile witness, not a hostile witness. He's got to represent the victims at the same time. It sounds like he's supportive of his ex-wife. Like, it is just a very difficult situation. They talk about going to a restaurant and Charlie Horse restaurant with the kids. I believe that was January 14th. And Patrick mentions that he was very hopeful that she seemed much better. They then talked about skiing, that on January 16th, he went skiing with Cora and another parent and that parent's son. Lindsay was at home. They were texting back and forth photos of the kids. On January 21st and 22nd, Lindsay's parents visited. They went to, sounded like a neighbor's house or something. And there was a fire or something, like a bonfire. They roasted marshmallows. But Patrick said that Lindsay was quieter. because on the 14th, he said she seemed much better, but then on the 21st, she seemed quieter. On January 23rd, Cora and Dawson went to school. Lindsay picked them up. Cora had some issues with her stomach at school. It sounded like I'm trying to think of a nice way, a defecating situation, problems with defecating, and that Cora was a little upset about it or something. And that was what they were calling it, that apparently she had troubles going. And that presented sometimes problems at school. Sometimes you just can't go and you got to go. And I don't know. They were talking about how there was a physical scheduled for Cora the next day. And that on Tuesday, January 24th, Lindsay took Cora at 0800 at 8 in the morning. Patrick was at home. They were sending photos back and forth, and that Patrick shared a photo of Dawson because he dressed himself for the first time. Lindsay got home about 8:30. Sounds like Patrick works in the basement or works in the bottom of the house. He said he went up twice that day where Lindsay was with the children, that it was a very busy day for him. She seemed happy, and she was playing with the kids. He says, quote, "It was one of her best days," end quote. Unimaginable. At 16:53, which is 4:53 p.m., she texted him about dinner. Do you want to get takeout? They went back and forth. The Commonwealth mentioned and asked about their normal takeout places, that this place was not their normal takeout places, and that the normal takeout places were closer. At 4:56 p.m., she asked Patrick to look at the menu. At 17:06, he sent her a text asking if Callan had taken a nap. Lindsay replied that he took a shorter nap than usual. He's awake. He asked, what is she eating? Or she asked him what he's eating. At 17:08, he sent his order. Lindsay called in the order, and he went upstairs. I can't read my writing. Picked up Callan and then left. And when he left, Dawson was eating chicken nuggets on the couch. And then they broke for the day. The lawyers were talking about some stuff back and forth, and they broke for the day. We are not going to have anything tomorrow, and we're going to come back on Wednesday. So, what do you think? The defense, of course, did their opening. They did not preserve their opening. They did their opening statement mentioning that it wasn't a fake unaliving attempt for Lindsay on herself, talking about the medications, talking about desperately trying to get help, and referring to it as more of an isolated incident, right? So we're starting to see the unfolding of the state's case. And the state spent their time talking about, you did this outing, you did that outing, here's the picture, she looks fine, and all this stuff, and specifying what it seems to be that, and again, this is just alleged, right? She's innocent until proven guilty, which the judge did mention at the beginning of this, that the Commonwealth has the burden. But bringing up incidents that made it sound like Patrick, as much as he seemed to be involved in all this, really did not have all this information. And could the Commonwealth be painting her, as sometimes we've heard in so many cases, and again, we're not on one side or the other, we're just evaluating it as we see it, as I see it. Love to know your thoughts. But sometimes we just don't know people we think we know. And it's tragic in some cases. So hopefully that helps. I'm going to be here. I was going to say day by day. We'll see how long this goes. I know from the prior pleadings, there is a lot of witnesses. And so I may only come to you when I feel that, because they have to establish the scene, they have to do so much stuff that I will come to you with the material that I feel is really super, super appropriate for the jury to make their decision, especially around, did the state prove the elements of the crimes? And if you have questions in the meantime as we go that you don't understand a particular thing, please put them in the comments below and I will do my best to answer it. I am working live and watching this live and doing 8,000 things. You've probably heard the phone ringing all day. And so I will do my best to answer you. If I don't happen to answer you and you really want an urgent answer, please feel free to post it again and I will get to it. Sometimes YouTube doesn't show it to me. So thank you for being here. I appreciate their support of the channel and I will see you on the next one.